This person said, learning about my secondary PTSD from the trauma our children have suffered from. We adopted the
Yeah.
kids from hard places and are only now learning about our own responses to their trauma. Josh, what would you say
Yes.
to that?
Yeah, totally valid, right? So Cassie and I were involved in foster care in Missouri for 10 years or so, and adopted a number of kiddos from that background, and have a lot of friends and family that are involved in foster care and adoption ministry. So it's something that's very dear to my heart and our heart. And we're just very familiar with the realities of secondary trauma in that kind of ministry and engagement. And it's a very real thing that when you are facing and dealing with situations that kiddos are going through and that they're experiencing, and that you're really powerless to fix, change, or stop, that you're along for the ride and trying to care for them and nurture them, but are witness to kind of the pain and struggle of their life that you didn't cause and you can't cure and you
Right. I
can't
even think about just
fix.
when you love someone, how difficult it is to watch them, walk through something that's so hard for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the trauma that comes from just an imperfect system as a whole, that it can be really disillusioning when you come into foster care adoption ministry in terms of what you think that's going to look like versus the realities of what it often looks like. Can feel very frustrating that things are very often don't feel fair and don't seem right and don't seem necessarily what's in the best interest of a kiddo, but are the best that the system has to offer for kiddos. And so you're facing and dealing with systems and structures that are imperfect, and that can create a lot of pain and for the caregivers as well. Plus, there's a lot of projected stuff, right? When you step into the role of parent with kiddos that have been abused and traumatized, the eating the lunch, as it were, of your predecessors, where that trauma for the kiddos originated, now gets projected onto you, and you're having to deal with the pain and struggle and hurt and the anger and grief and all the things that you didn't cause, but you get to deal with, which isn't fair at all to you, but as part of you stepping in the gap and being a part of their healing and process. So I think it's important to recognize the realness of that experience and to engage the self-care that's needed to care for your own heart, and engage community in such a way that enables others to bear that with you in a way that enables you to heal along the way. I sometimes use like a football analogy, right? Professional football players cannot engage their sport without being injured. Like when we talk about players being injured, what we mean is that they're injured so badly that they can't play. Like every time they get on the field and push their bodies to those extremes and have the impact that they experience, their body comes out bruised, beat up, twisted, injured, right? And the regimen that professional athletes engage in between matches, in between games, in order to restore their body, to be able to engage and perform again, is what allows them, enables them to be able to get back out on the field and to play again. That if they didn't engage in restorative activities, they wouldn't be able to continue to play, because there's just injury that's part and parcel with what it is they're doing. And life is like that. Parenting, foster parenting, adoptive work is definitely like that. That there's no way to engage it without it injuring you as a person. without it hurting your heart, without it having a toll and an impact on you mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And it has an impact on every part of your being. And if you're not actively engaging a restorative process that repairs that injury, then you'll very quickly reach the end of your body's ability to give out, and you'll burn out in that process. And that can look like you no longer being able to provide care, or closing a license, or not being able to be there for kiddos, or just emotionally withdrawing and disconnecting. And because once you hit E, your brain goes into survival mode. Like it's like physics. It's like gas in your car. You can, when it hits empty, it's empty. It's gone. It's done. The car stops running. And that you can't deny the physics of how God designed our body. And if you are not engaged in a restorative process, you will run out of your resources, and your brain will shut down and go into survival mode in a way that you distance yourself, you disconnect, and maybe you're physically present, but you're no longer able to be nurturing. You're no longer able to truly care for the kiddos that are with you. So it's just essential to understand self-care and how to engage that restorative process that can enable you to continue to be at your best, both for the kiddos as well as the rest of the people who rely on you, and for you to enjoy life and fullness of life like the Father intends for you.
Yeah. It's a hard place to be in. But I do appreciate the beautiful empathy that this question comes from. Just the empathy that these parents have for their children and their trauma. And, that to me speaks love. That question, I just see, oh my goodness, these parents love their babies so much that they would take that trauma and put it on themselves to try and maybe even in their heads carry it themselves, And I mean, it's a beautiful place of empathy, and I appreciate that so much. But I do recognize, hard situation, definitely something that needs to be processed and addressed.
Yeah, it's hard to do sometimes, but there's this analogy that we use, like if you've ever been on a commercial airline flight and the flight attendants kind of going through their pre-flight checklist, and one of the things that they will say is, if the cabin loses pressure, oxygen masks will fall down. If you're traveling with a child or a disabled person, put your mask on first. Because, which sounds selfish at first, right? You think put a mask on the kid, right? But if you pass out, you're no help to anyone. You're just another hindrance and in the way, and that you're not able to be helpful to the person that you're traveling with if you are unconscious. And self-care is like this in terms of relationship, that if you do not engage in self-care, you burn out in a way that no longer makes you any use to anybody. And so there's a need to be aware of the limitations of your design by God's design, and to care for your body in the way that God designed, so that you actually have the ability to continue to love and care and give and have outflow from that.